Greetings and salutations. It is I, Johnny, episode 29 of the Who the Heaven Is I podcast. And, I want to thank you for listening, first off. I mean, listen, you have a lot of choices out there, and the fact that you've gravitated towards this podcast, well, that makes me feel great. But hopefully, more importantly, it'll make you feel great. Because you know, if this is your first podcast you're listening to of the Who the Heaven Is I podcast, I do this for two reasons. Well, probably more than that, but first reason is just, generally when I wake up in the morning, just kind of get things out of my head and to kind of vocally journal what's going on. I find that to be very healthy and therapeutic just to clear the brain. But more importantly, sometimes like I might say something that could resonate with you. And maybe it could save you some of the pitfalls that I've gone into by saying, oh, that dude went through that. I'm going to make sure I don't do that because I don't want to go through that. Or the positive of it could be like, oh, wow, I didn't know that was possible. I'm going to try that. Um, so then there's also, I guess the third thing is that, you know, hey, dude, I've been through that. Let me reach out to you and call the cool line at 650-383-7469 and give you some tips, Johnny, because I know how to lift you up and get you over the fence. And that's kind of what I believe we are all in this realm to do is to make the dream work. We've got to find the teamwork. And it doesn't always seem to be evident, especially um, it seems to be that we're in a me-centric world. Maybe it's the people I surround myself with. Maybe it's just a passing phase. But I mean, I get for the most part why it has to be a me-centric world because it comes back down to the oxygen mask in the airplane. You know, gotta put yours on before you take care of your family. But in the same token, it's almost like, from my perception, especially in a capitalist society, there's people that are grabbing everyone else's masks to make sure that in case their mask breaks, they have backup and they don't run out of air. And it's like they're hoarding all the air masks. And that just doesn't seem right. So I have titled this episode Think About It. And I'm going to start this with something I learned in 10th grade. I was at a lady friend's house, and her father, who I very rarely spoke with, he was always down in the basement working on his model airplanes and stuff. Really nice guy, though. Just he did his thing. But he said to me one day, speaking, and I don't remember the preface to it, but it was like, we park on a driveway and we drive on a parkway. Isn't that crazy? And just take that statement and think about it. It's like we park on a driveway and we drive on a parkway. It doesn't make really much sense in a verbiage type, focus. Like if you're thinking about the actual literary value of a parkway, it's the way to park, I guess, right? A driveway, it's the way to drive. Unless they took out the word away, park away. Like there's no more of the parking, so you're just going to drive on the parkway. And there's no more driving, so you're just going to drive is away. That's the only thing I can think of because it really is something that doesn't make much sense. And so it's Thursday. And when I was younger, they always say it's very lucky to wear green on Thursdays. And so I'm going to parlay that greenness into something that resonates with me near and dear, technology, and companies saying that they're green. So I started by saying we're in this capitalist society, which I get, right? But the thing I don't get is how companies can call themselves green, but then make disposable technology that they could very well fix. That, to me, is kind of like an oxymoron. Or maybe we're just all morons because of the fact that we buy into it, literally. The example I've always used is a mailbox. A mailbox that you bought back in 1970 still works today. And the postal carrier can still put mail in it as long as some punks didn't come by and smash it, or there was a tree that fell down during the last storm. So there's that. Now, granted, technology changes and evolves, but it's how many different times are you going to sell the same thing? The only thing from technology standpoint that I see that changes is the software. So can we at any point pause the making of the devices and just focus on the software and perfecting that, because it doesn't seem to ever get perfected, yet we're all paying the price. And this is something I had a texting conversation with a client yesterday that was trying to work on a website it's something that the website does take money from you when you do sales. So it's something that there is an exchange of finance. And so she went to get support and they said, "Oh, we don't really support that. Look in the forum." And to me, that is the biggest cop out of technology. Like, any company that sells you something or provides a service but then doesn't support it is like saying, all we want is your money. We don't really care about you. Now, how does that make you feel? Because I think I've said it in other episodes before. I'm, although I work in technology and I have the gift of interpreting things and understanding how they break down at work, there's a strong desire for me to get out of it, primarily because of the fact that A, it's not solid. These companies build a set platform or service or product, and then before they perfect it, because there's always software updates that keep coming out, they come out with something new that you need to get. So it truly is sand castles that we're building, and then the waves roll in and say, "Oh, now we need to build a new sand castle." But why are we using sand? Maybe we should use wood or rocks, something that's not gonna drift away so quickly and easily. And I think that's the big challenge. Now everyone goes, "Oh, well, they have to make money." Well, you know, I don't think that's true, because first off, if you look at all of the billions of dollars in the bank by some of the largest tech companies, they've got money, right? But they're just going to keep on recycling the same stuff. Like, to me, it would seem that the wise move would be to say, "Hey, we've built the best product. Now let's shift and go into dun 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 the next big thing." Um, and then channel your energy there, and then charge a nominal fee for software updates and the perfection that you have to do, because I get that time is money, um, but money is time, and I think that if our money is the main focus, it's never going to work for the sustainability on this planet, and that's my probably more than 2 cents on that one. That's probably like $1.50, but it is what it is. I think that technology companies should offer support on a variety of levels in a humane fashion, not these roto autobot things that you call in, and it's really, it's causing this epidemic of breaking down someone's mentality, because people that are used to talking to humans, and when you can't ask the question you want to ask to a robot, then it's like, how do you get to where you want to go? It's like a map that you have to assemble yourself and hope that the pieces fit, and they don't always. The trees of these automated services don't always bring you where you need to go. um, and and I've experienced this, and I'm going to put it out there, like with Citibank. Like there's a banking tree of questions you have to go into when you call that number, and it's like, if you don't have this, you have that, and then what if you didn't have that? And that's why you're calling. You can't get anywhere. um, and it's crazy, and people assume that you always have technology, and sometimes that's not always the case. Sometimes people just have phones. Not everyone, especially those in their golden years, have access to the same type of technology or knowledge and know how of how to use. So we're obsoleting the society, and I think there's value in all human beings. But if we, as a technology society, start obsoleting those in their golden years because, well, it's Darwinism. Yeah, but maybe they have some knowledge to pass off to the youngins, and the youngins can pass off some stuff to those in the golden years. Then we become a more balanced society. This is my own observations. I'm not saying to lose your identity and who you are. In fact, quite the opposite. I think we all need to unlock who we really are, and live that tenfold, as opposed to this whole society is based upon, we have to do this, we have to do that because that's the way it is. And in my observations, it doesn't seem to be working. Because if it was, I feel that people would be happier. We would have a better understanding of mental health, and mental wellness would be paramount. Uh, and today, well, this month is Mental Health Awareness Month. And yesterday and the day before, I had the pleasure of attending and participating and training in youth mental health first aid. Because, quite frankly, there's people going through some crises that could use some help. And I don't find that many people know how to help those in need to the degree that is um, helpful. I mean, people think they're being helpful sometimes because they come from a good space, but if you don't follow some of these basic steps of recognizing that they are human too, and they're not just some sort of templated case, then we're not serving the public. I mean, there's different agencies that approach things differently than others. And I think that's to be said with anything, right? Like it's how you learn and how you grow up. I think there was a great example during the class yesterday that a coach on a football team, you know, thinking they're helping someone by just getting them to toughen up, you know, might not, well, it definitely is not the best way to handle someone going through some really tough things. And what's interesting is, that mentality could, yes, it could totally help you win a football game or a soccer match. But when someone is going through stuff that's hard to process mentally, and I know this firsthand, like getting people that love you and they know the best for you, and then they try to spew everything that's them onto you to fix you, as opposed to, and I said I think yesterday, asking the most important question, hey, what's going on? How can I help? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, I think we ourselves, when we, and this is something that does take time, have to sit with ourselves and kind of think through where we are, how we got here, where we're going, and put it all together so we can kind of heal ourselves. Because everyone's situation is different. Even if you go to a mental health professional, they will, to some degree, template you because that's what all doctors do, which to a degree, like even in troubleshooting theory, when I'm doing tech work, that's what you have to do. But there are abnormalities, and especially with a human experience, there are so many more variables. And all too often, we, from what I observe in society, we don't value the perception and perspective of the person going through anything that is cerebral seriously. Meaning, some like, okay, so I'm going to pause that for a second, and well, let me think. Let me get that thought out first, and then I'll go to a story. What happens is, say we have templated someone as they have some sort of mental quote unquote illness, and they're going through a situation. And so now everything is now filtered through that thought process. So if they say something that seems to be quote unquote far fetched, we as a society take it as with a grain of salt, because, well, they're going through this issue, they're this, they're that, and so they're just thinking things. But it's one of those things, is what if they were right and we didn't explore that possibility as well, and it became even more damaging to them by not letting them voice their opinion and us taking it seriously. And to me, that is adding fuel to the fire of something that's already burning. And most people, and I know this firsthand because I have people in my life that are going through stuff. They want to get better. They know that there's something going on. They often don't know how to fix it. Otherwise, they would. If it was that easy, flip a switch, it's done. But it takes sometimes bouncing your ideas off someone to get a different perspective. And to me, that is the greatest value of going to a mental health professional that is able to pivot from everything they learn sometimes and just listen objectively, not trying to match it to something, but to listen to objectively what someone's saying and say, huh, that's an interesting point of view. That's an interesting perspective. I can see now why they think the way they do. And maybe this solution is actually better than the original solution I was going to advise. There, boom. So the story I was going to tell, that I'm going to tell, one day I was riding a bus to work, and a dude jumped on the bus, and we were just talking, and we had an amazing conversation. He seemed like a really, really nice guy. And towards the end of the ride on the bus, he divulged to me he had escaped from some sort of mental institution. And prior to that statement, I would never have guessed that. And I wonder, and there's people that go through stuff, I get it, but I wonder if he was put in this mental institution because people did not understand who he was, but rather because of them just saying, oh, well, he must be this, and then putting it in there, and therefore adding fuel to his fire, making him, quote unquote, explode or be crazy. Because, I mean, you put certain, chemicals together, what's going to happen is what's going to happen. And I think if someone is under duress and they're really desperately seeking help, but then you add more stressors to their life, and then you tell them, oh, well, you've got the problem, you've got this, you've got that. And then you put them in a place that, would even more confine their free thought and their ability to think things through. Then it becomes like, oh my gosh, what happens, And I I don't know. It's like incarcerating, people on a regular level. If there's no way to get through to them, and you're just locking people up and there's no rehabilitation, then what happens? And I don't really know too much about what happens in mental institutions besides what you see on TV. They give you medicine, they tell you you're going to be better. Um, but if I look at the regular healthcare industry, the medicine they give us isn't always the best thing. And if you look at most religions, and not saying religion is the end all be all, um, there is something about oneness and becoming at peace with yourself and doing it through meditation. And I wonder if in mental institutions they have regular meditations, if they have regular time where people just go in and connect and and really on a non-medicinal type level try or do some sort of healing breath work, because all those things scientifically have proven to reduce stress. I think Dan Harris from the 10% Happier podcast, he talked about his anxiety and panic attack, um, you know, right before going on camera, and it's like one of those things that he seems to be a much more well-managed man. Now, maybe there's some meds involved, but there's a whole lot of meditation. And I think when you're able to slow down, that the answers come more quickly and you feel more at peace. So I'm going to end this episode that it got really real, but I think sometimes these episodes will do that. Um, I I especially after being in a mental health first aid class the past 2 days, you look at things differently, especially when you realize there's an epidemic going on, not just because of you know people wanting to be like that, but I think coming back to technology, we're putting so much stimulation out there, and it's becoming harder to process things, that it's essential that we find our ways to detach and to process. And I think that meditation by far, and healthy isolation. When I say healthy isolation, meaning you don't isolate to avoid people. Like I will go in my Dagobah must I go? Think to myself, I must. I go into my Yoda mode where I'll just be by myself so I can think and do things, primarily because a sometimes people just want to keep telling me what I need to be doing, and sometimes their advice is valid when it's people that have actually taken the time to understand a what I'm trying to do, b what I'm going through, and c who I am, not them, right? But I always like to be in social environments. I understand that if we silo too much, then it becomes bad for not only us but for society, because we're meant to share ourselves with people, spiritually and socially. And I think that ever since 2020, people isolate more, which is part of the reason why this influx of mental health problems has arisen, because people aren't expressing themselves healthily. So I am going to share something I wrote back in 2019 as I was in the car with my father, and we were heading from Virginia to DC with my mom and my nephew, and my dad said something about traffic, um, and I looked to the other side, and while there was a little bit of traffic, um, it didn't look like as bad as the other side. So I came up with this little saying here: if you think you have it bad, someone has it worse. If you think you have it good, someone has it great. If you think you have it great, then share your greatness with the world. And that's pretty much something I could live by. Even though I don't necessarily think I'm quote unquote great, I do think I have great things to share. I do know things could always be worse. I do think that things could always be better. But I think my quote unquote greatness, and maybe greatness is more like uniqueness, my perspective, my methodology, my thought process, is different than others, which it should be, because we are all different beings. We've gone through different experiences. So let that be something that, hopefully resonates with you. Like, everyone's got something to share. And in my life, I've come across people, a good friend and coworker at Apple. She was always looking for, I don't know what my passion is. I don't know. Like, and she felt so frustrated and suppressed. It felt like that she couldn't find herself. And I'm like, well, just try different things and have fun doing it, and don't take things too serious. And I see joy in her posts, from here and there. So hopefully she's finding her passion and her greatness. But sometimes it's just being who you are. I mean, I find her to be a really funny person that has really great taste in music, and it's nice. And, like, maybe that's something to explore. I don't know. I should give her a shout out, because she's one of those good souls, great souls. I think sometimes, to wrap things up, I'm going to say sometimes technology hinders our magic in this universe, meaning one of my superpowers back in the day was remembering people's birthdays and giving them a call or giving a shout out. Like, oh man, you remembered, Now, to flip that nowadays, it seems like there's people out there that will totally be the first to wish you a happy birthday and say, oh, that's great. But in my perception, it's so ingenuine, especially with several people that I see do this, right? And then I would reach out to them on a different occasion, and they read the comments because they go, to the screen and they don't respond. And it's like, why would you wish me a happy birthday, but then it's my unbirthday and you won't have a conversation with me? This is why, ladies and gentlemen, the unbirthday is by far the most valuable thing to celebrate with people you love, because it truly shows that you don't need a special day to celebrate them. You just need them to celebrate them. And with that, the good people, creatures of the universe, listening to the Why Cast, thank you for listening. If you want to, yeah, made it through the episode with only one yawn. If you want to, I would be ever so happy if you answer the question of the day. Question of the day is, what do you think about when you are alone? What do you think about when you are alone? And the poll of the day is, do you spend time alone? Never. Too much. I'm more of a people person. Um, Sometimes I like humans, but they can get to me if I don't have balance, or all the time. It's the only way I can keep peace of mind. So, answer the question of the day, the poll of the day, by going to Spotify.com or using the Spotify app to answer. And you can always call slash text the cool line for tips, tricks at 650-383-7469. You can also call and just say, what up? Because, viewer interaction is appreciated. It's not necessary. I do this just because I am I. But if you want to connect, you can always reach that number there or follow me on all the social channels at IJOHNNI. Thanks for listening. Have a great day and a pleasant tomorrow.